In the West Philippine Sea, something is hidden. Something so powerful it could change the future of nations. For years, the waves kept it quiet. But the silence is now breaking. Under these waters lies more than sand, more than stone. It is energy so huge it can shift the balance of Asia. This is not just a local fight. It is a race pulling in the world's powers. A prize that could decide who controls the next century. And the truth, after years of secrecy, is finally exposed. Up to 11 billion barrels of oil, nearly 190 trillion cubic feet of gas, a fortune worth $26 trillion locked inside Philippine waters. For the Philippines, it is survival. For China, it is a claim it will never surrender. And in 2025, the United States entered the fight, shaking Beijing's grip on the sea. This is no longer about maps. It is about power, survival, and control. The question is simple. What happens when the superpower of the world enters and China refuses to back down? This is where the story begins. Few people know what lies deep under the South China Sea. It is not just water and waves. It is a hidden fortune. The U.S. Energy Information Administration revealed that these seas hold one of the largest untapped energy reserves in the world. Billions of barrels of oil, trillions of cubic feet of natural gas. Philippine experts call it nothing less than a mountain of gold. For Manila, this is not luxury. It is survival. Every year, the Philippines spends billions to buy fuel from abroad, from the Middle East, from Asia, from faraway ports. Without those shipments, lights would go out, pumps would run dry, and the economy would choke. But if the Philippines could unlock what lies under its own waters, the story would change. It could power its own factories, drive its own cars, keep its own streets alive at night. The nation would no longer bow to foreign suppliers. It would stand on its own resources. Yet this hidden treasure is not lying in peace. It sits in contested waters, surrounded by rival claims, guarded by ships that say, "This is ours." For the Philippines, it is hope. For China, it is power. And for the United States, it is an opening too great to ignore. This ocean of riches is not just fuel. It is the spark of a coming storm. Most people don't know that on paper, the Philippines has already won. In 1982, the world signed the UNCLOS Treaty, the Law of the Sea. It gave nations clear rights over their exclusive economic zones, or EEZs. For the Philippines, this meant a 200-mile zone measured from its shores. Inside that zone, all the oil, all the gas, all the fish belong to the Philippines. But China drew its own line, the so-called 9-dash line that swallowed almost the whole South China Sea. In 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague ruled against Beijing. It declared the 9-dash line illegal. It confirmed the Philippines has crystal clear rights to explore and use its waters. On paper, the matter should be settled, but in the water, the story is different. Chinese Coast Guard ships shadow Philippine boats. Chinese vessels block survey teams. Exploration crews are chased away, even within the Philippines' legal EEZ. Every attempt to drill or survey meets the same answer: a white ship with a red flag, ordering them to stop. The result is a strange picture. A country with full legal rights, a victory in the highest court, yet still unable to touch its own resources. Because in these waters, law does not travel as fast as power. UNCLOS may give the Philippines its rights. The PCA may declare China's line invalid, but China's ships still block the way, and so the nation stands at a crossroads, with law on its side, but force in its path. On the shores of Palawan, giant pipelines snake out into the sea. They connect to the Malampaya gas field, the hidden engine that powers nearly 1/3 of Luzon's electricity. Every flick of a light switch in Manila, every hum of a factory machine, every cooled room on a hot summer day, all of it depends on this single field. But Malampaya has a secret. Its wells are running dry. By 2027, the gas will be gone, and with it, 30% of the nation's power supply. The warning is brutal. Without new energy, the Philippines will face rolling blackouts, soaring prices, and crippled industries. The countdown has already started. Imagine the financial capital of the country in darkness. Imagine hospitals running on failing generators. Imagine millions of families left without stable power. That is the future Malampaya's silence threatens to bring. For decades, leaders looked for answers in the West Philippine Sea. But every time Manila prepared to drill, Chinese ships blocked the path. and every delay cut another second off the clock. Malampaya was never meant to last forever. It was a bridge, a stepping stone to the greater riches lying further offshore. But with time running out, the Philippines stands at the edge of an energy cliff, and only a bold choice can stop the fall before the final seconds run out. It began with quiet conversations, but now the signals are clear. Major U.S. energy firms are showing strong interest in deep water drilling off the Philippine coasts. What looks like business on the surface is far more than economics. It is a strategic move. Philippine officials hint that inviting American partners does two things at once. It brings in world-class technology for exploration, and it builds a political shield against China. Because once U.S. companies are involved, the projects are no longer just Philippine ventures. They carry the weight of the United States itself, and Beijing knows it. The moment reports surfaced, China protested. Its diplomats accused Manila of crossing a red line. Its state media warned of serious consequences. But in Washington, there was no angry speech, no fiery statement, only a steady, deliberate silence. Because silence itself was a message. U.S. warships kept sailing through the South China Sea. Defense officials kept reminding of mutual treaty obligations, and private firms continued to explore investment talks. Step by step, the Philippine waters were turning into more than an energy zone. They were becoming a stage for superpower rivalry. For decades, the front line between Washington and Beijing was about trade, Taiwan, or technology. But now it could be about oil rigs, steel platforms rising from contested seas, flags of foreign powers flying over drilling ships, and every barrel of oil pulled from the seabed would no longer just fuel economies. It would fuel a widening conflict. There is one decision that has cost the Philippines an entire decade. Back in 2014, Manila froze all new drilling projects in the disputed West Philippine Sea. The order was meant to ease tensions to avoid clashes with China, but that pause became a long silence. Year after year, the freeze stayed in place. While the Philippines held back, others moved forward. Vietnam kept drilling, Malaysia kept exploring. Even Chinese rigs pushed deeper into contested waters. By the time Manila tried again in 2024, the damage was clear. A project in Rectobank, one of the most promising energy blocks, was forced to stop. Philippine ships were harassed by Chinese Coast Guard vessels. Survey crews withdrew, and the chance to tap a vital reserve slipped away. The result? 10 years of lost opportunity. 10 years of rising dependence on foreign fuel. 10 years closer to the Malampaya shutdown. Meanwhile, neighbors secured billions in new contracts and expanded their energy security. The Philippines was left waiting, watching, and paying more. A single lost year can be costly, but a lost decade is crippling. And with Malampaya's clock still ticking, Manila cannot afford to stand still again. The freeze was meant to buy time. Instead, it wasted it. Now, the choice is urgent. Move forward with new drilling, or face another decade in the dark. There is one place in the West Philippine Sea that carries more weight than all the rest. It is called Rectobank. Beneath this stretch of water lies an energy prize like no other. An estimated 5.4 billion barrels of oil and nearly 55 trillion cubic feet of gas. The single biggest untapped treasure in Philippine waters. For Manila, Rectobank is the ultimate key to energy independence. For Beijing, it is a resource it will never give up without a fight. That is why experts call it the real flashpoint. Every attempt to survey or drill here has been met with harassment. Chinese ships block access. Chinese vessels shadow exploration teams. Even local fishermen are driven away. The message is clear. Rectobank is contested ground, but the stakes are too high to ignore. With Malampaya running dry, Rectobank could keep the lights on in Luzon for decades. It could cut dependence on foreign fuel. It could lift the Philippines into a new age of stability. Yet analysts warn of the risk. Drilling here without strong allies could trigger the next standoff at sea. A clash not just of ships, but of nations. Rectobank is no longer just a map coordinate. It is a test of Philippine resolve, a test of whether Manila will step forward, this time not alone but with America at its side. And that decision could decide whether the sea becomes a source of power or the spark of the next great conflict. Not all energy battles are fought over giants like Rectobank. Sometimes the story turns to much smaller fields that reveal far more than numbers. One example is the Codlo oil field near Palawan. It was revived recently after years of being forgotten. Compared to Recto, Cadlo is tiny. Its output is small, its reserves limited. But Cadlo has one advantage. It lies far from China's shadow. No Coast Guard patrols, no harassment at sea. For Manila, Cadlo is the safe choice. A way to show progress without risking confrontation, but critics see it differently. They call it a symbol of caution, choosing crumbs while a feast waits untouched. Because while the Philippines drills tiny fields in quiet corners, its neighbors take bolder steps. Vietnam keeps drilling in disputed waters despite constant Chinese protests. Malaysia pushes new exploration projects forward, even when challenged. They accept the risk, and in return, they secure the reward: more energy, more independence, more leverage. The Philippines, by contrast, continues to wait. It celebrates small fields while leaving its greatest treasures untapped. The lesson is sharp. Avoiding risk may bring safety, but it also brings dependence. Every year of caution means more imports, more costs, and more lost opportunity. Cadlo shows what Manila can do, but Recto shows what Manila must do. And sooner or later, the people will ask the harder question: how long can leaders choose the safe path while the nation's future slips away at sea? Change in the Philippines' energy story began with a bold move from the top. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. extended the life of the Malampaya gas field until 2039. This meant Luzon's power lifeline would not vanish overnight. But he did not stop there. The government opened new basins for exploration. It invited global players, including U.S. investors, to join. And it sent a clear message to both allies and rivals: we will not stay beggars on a mountain of gold. For the Philippines, this was a declaration of confidence. For Beijing, it was a nightmare, because U.S. entry changes everything. American companies bring world-class drilling technology. American alliances bring military and political weight. And international law already backs Manila's claim over its EEZ. Oil, gas, and law all now point against China's 9-dash line. The response from Beijing was swift. Official protests, warnings of serious consequences, more Chinese ships in the contested waters. But the Philippines, for the first time in a decade, showed it would not step back. Extending Malampaya gave breathing room. Opening basins gave new options. Courting America gave real protection. This was more than energy policy. It was a strategic shift, a signal that Manila was ready to gamble big. And the world knows what is at stake. This gamble could bring prosperity to millions, or it could push the region toward open confrontation. China's nightmare is unfolding. Philippine waters are no longer under its control. Beneath the waves lies one of the world's richest energy vaults. Billions of barrels of oil, trillions of cubic feet of gas, enough to shift the balance of Asia. For years, Beijing enforced its claim with maps, ships, and constant threats. Every survey team faced harassment. Every drill ship was blocked. Every attempt at progress was crushed at sea. But in 2025, that grip began to slip. U.S. companies arrived with deep water technology. U.S. alliances stood behind Manila with security guarantees. And international law had already sided with the Philippines. Oil and gas became more than resources. They turned into a weapon of sovereignty, a test of who owns the right to survive on their own land and sea. The Philippines is now trapped in a high-stakes triangle. On one side, China's greed. On the other, America's strategy. At the center, its own desperate need for energy. Every move carries a cost. Every barrel drilled could bring prosperity to millions or trigger a clash that changes the course of history. That is why U.S. interest has shaken China's claim to the core. The treasure once guarded in silence is now the world's most dangerous bargaining chip. The choice is no longer distant. The Philippines must decide: drill and claim its future, or stay frozen in fear while its fortune lies buried under the sea. For decades, Filipinos were told their sea was rich, but all they saw were broken promises, stalled projects, and rising imports. Families paid higher bills. Cities lived through rolling blackouts. The nation stood in the dark while its own treasure lay untouched beneath the waves. Now the tide may finally turn, because oil and gas are not just numbers on a chart. They are the electricity that lights schools at night, They are the jobs that feed families. They are the sovereignty that keeps a nation standing tall against bigger powers. The Philippines holds a choice that could change its future. Subscribe now for more hidden stories that reveal how small nations can shake global giants. And tell us, should the Philippines push drilling in the West Philippine Sea?